Actionable strategies that's going to help you to overcome your overthinking, guaranteed. So trust me when I say one of the biggest things that people come to me for therapy for is to help them with their anxiety. And the one thing that brings anxiety is the overthinking. It's when you're worrying and planning about things that have not yet happened. And it's this worrying that brings on the stress and the depression that you are trying to avoid. But here's the thing. There's a big difference between having a thought and then overthinking when that thought comes up. So I'll give you guys some examples. So you may have a thought, hey, it's a nice day today. Hey, I want to go to the beach. Or hey, I would love to go grab something to eat for dinner, right? Like all these are just thoughts that we all have. They come, they go, and then they come again, right? So they're just kind of passing like traffic on the highway. But the overthinking starts to come when we start to think about all the problems that could come with any of those ideas. So the problem of, man, it looks like it's going to rain tonight, or it's going to rain today. Like, should I go to the beach? Or, man, I want to go and talk to this girl, or I want to go talk to this guy at the bar, but I don't know if they're going to like me. I don't know if I look nice myself. I don't even know if I like me. You start having all these doubts. And this is where you take a simple thought and you magnify it. Where something as simple as going to the store, right, to get something to eat, now comes into this whole thing about how you look, how people perceive you. Maybe you're going to get into a car accident, right? And now you're staying home and deciding to use Uber Eats or order your groceries home. This is where the overthinking starts to come. I also want to give you guys another example because I want to make sure you know the difference between having a thought and then thinking, or in this situation, knowing the difference between planning and overthinking. Because here's the thing, you have to plan for your future. If you're not planning, whether it's your finances, your family, your fun time, whatever it is, if you're not planning for the future, you're going to be lost. So you have to have a good view of what's coming up. Now, what tends to happen is people get planning confused with worrying. Worrying is when you take all those things that could happen in the future and you start to think about all the negative things that come with these future plans that you have. So something as simple as going to the beach, going on a family vacation, now becomes you worrying about your finances for next month, or worrying that you're going to make it there safe, or even worrying if you're going to make it to the airport on time for your flight. This is the big difference. So when you start to feel yourself starting to get worried, anxious, focusing on all the negative things that are happening or that could happen, this is when you have crossed that border and gone from planning to worry. And that's what we want to make sure we want to avoid. Now, why is overthinking so important to talk about, and why is it so important to stop? Well, it's because your best version of yourself comes when you start taking action. It doesn't come when you're focused on all the things that could go wrong. And when you're at your best self, the people around you, they really and truly benefit. So right now, you may be someone that works as a service, right? Maybe a service provider, kind of like myself as a therapist and a coach. Your services are designed to help people in this world to have a better life. But if you're overthinking, if you're not doing your service, if you're not being the best version of yourself while you're helping these people, you're going to leave a mark on them. You're not going to be able to serve them at the level that you know you could be serving them. And we want to make sure that we avoid that, because your passion is something that you need to explore. Now, here's something else that you guys need to understand. The overthinking that comes, it comes when we start to focus on things that are not necessarily in our control. It comes when we focus on things that are in the control of other people, like their thoughts, their feelings, their actions, what they say. I'll even say something as random as who becomes the president of the United States, which is a big topic right now. When you start to focus on those things, you start to become powerless. And trust me, you will notice that sense of powerless, the sense of hopelessness that you're feeling. And that will turn your anxiety into depression, which is something that we don't want to happen. So what I'm going to do in this podcast is I'm going to give you guys 3 simple tips that's going to help you to overcome your overthinking so that you can start overproducing in your life. Now, before I get to that first point, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can be a part of a community of entrepreneurs and working professionals that are working towards making sure their mental health is in the right space so that they can perform at their best level in their business or their career. That's the sole purpose of this podcast. So if that sounds like you, hit the subscribe button. And once you do that, buckle your seatbelts because we're about to jump into point number 1. Point number 1 to help you to stop overthinking comes from a quote from Oprah Winfrey and also Nick Saban. So someone once asked them, what is the definition of mindfulness? And they both ironically gave the same answer. And it's great to notice this because these are two people who are stellar, who are, complete titans in their fields. And they both simply said, be where your feet are. When they were asked, what is mindfulness? They simply said, being where your feet are. Being where your feet are helps you to be focused and anchored into the right here, right now, because your future has not happened yet. And the beautiful thing about being in the present is that you can actually influence your future by taking actions today. So in other words, that trip that you're worrying about planning, that you feel that you don't have the finances for, well, if you take action today, whether it's finding a side hustle, learning how to cut costs, or maybe even taking your business to the next level by raising your prices, or even hiring a coach to help you with your marketing. These are things that's going to help you so that when you do look to book that flight, when you do look to book that hotel, when you do look to, get that vacation going, you will have it, no problem. What's even funny about that is I have an experience, right? A very relevant experience about this, where when I first moved to South Florida, everything just seemed expensive, and it still is. The houses and everything, even the drinks that you will buy down here, everything was 2 to 3 times the price of where I was from, which is in South Carolina. So I remember when I moved down here, I had my school counseling job, and I was making about $50,000 a year, but the price of homes at that time was about $350,000. That was the average. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking how am I supposed to pay for this, right? The math just wasn't mathing, as we say. And what ended up happening was that I decided to start my own business. I decided to take my finances into my own hands. And what that led me to do is actually more than double the amount of money I was making as a high school counselor. But now I'm able to buy a house, which I'm shooting this podcast in. And I did this even though inflation took houses way beyond $350,000. So what I'm trying to say is by taking action today, you're able to influence whatever future you want. Therefore, you get nothing out of worrying about the future because it hasn't come yet. And you have the ability to manipulate your future for the better. Here's main point number 2 that's going to help you to stop overthinking. And this is a great one. I really, really love this one because it helped me in so many places in my life outside of business. And I'll tell you guys a story about that. But point number 2 to help you to stop overthinking is to write down your course of action and stick to it. Now, about, I want to say 5 months ago, me and my wife, we were looking at this crib that we bought. And we were like, yo, are we ever going to get to it? Are we ever going to put this together? And I remember sitting there man, this crib, it's in a lot of pieces. It's going to take a long time to put together. And I remember thinking one day, hey, let me surprise my wife. Let me be that stellar husband that I pride myself on being and surprise her by having this crib put together. So she went to work, I stayed home, and I started working on this crib. And when I took this crib out of the box, guys, it had so many pieces that I almost gave up right then and there. I almost said, look, my wife's going to be mad because now all these pieces are all across the room. But hey, it is what it is, as we say. But I said, you know what? Let me just pick up these instructions and start off with point number 1, right? With step number 1. What's funny about putting cribs together, desks together, or anything like that, is that at the beginning, it seems almost impossible. And I'll even say this, at the beginning, you don't see it coming together. You see the picture on the instructions, you see all these pieces, but you're like, no way all these pieces are going to match and come to being in this image that's on this box. But lo and behold, if you take step 1 and you take your time and you get to step 2 or you get to step 20, like I did, you slowly start to see this thing come together until you do it. And that's what it's like. That's why it's so important to write down a course of action and stick to it. Because here's the thing, the goals that you have right now are so big that it doesn't seem possible at this moment. And that is so beautiful. And the reason why is because a goal of that magnitude is going to be very fulfilling when you get to the end of it. You can set a small goal and you can do it. And you may look back and say, hey, that was pretty cool. But will you feel that fulfillment that you're looking for if you go out of your way to chase something that's really, really big, to go beyond your comfort zone? That's going to be the question that you have to ask yourself. Because here's the thing. Every time that I've pushed myself beyond my comfort zone, and every time I've seen my clients do the same thing, they've been so glad that they did. And it's left a mark on them in a good way that they'll never forget. And it's that mark that actually changes them. It makes it so that the next goal or the next obstacle that they come across, they feel more confident going against it because they have all this proof of what they're able to do. So for you, you have to push yourself, even if it's against a big goal that you feel that it's impossible to do. If you just write down your actions, if you just stick with it, trust me when I say, you will complete it. You will finish it, but you won't know that until you try. I'll also give you guys another example of this. So right now, I have a community that I'm building. And as a matter of fact, in the details or the description of this podcast, you join my newsletter and you get more information about it. But there's this community that I'm building. And I remember when I first had this idea and I started, I didn't have a roadmap. I was basically trying to do it on my own. And as a result, it went nowhere. What I decided to do after that, after almost, 2 years of just struggling, I decided to join a coaching program. And what's great about this coaching program is that it has 6 phases that you're to follow. And with these 6 phases that you're following, you also get a coach to walk you through each and every part of this stage. Now, the great thing about this is that I've been able to stay in this program and progress in it so much quicker than the 2 years that I've been trying to do it on my own, that it leaves me wondering what could have been possible, what could have been different if I started off with this coaching program or any coaching program and stuck with it. The reason why I'm getting more progress is because there's a series of steps for me to follow. When you have a plan, it stops all the worrying and the overthinking because there's a clear-cut path of where you need to go. It's kind of like having a GPS system now that you think about it. And what I'm asking for you to do is to write down your steps on a sheet of paper, make it concrete, so that way you have your own GPS system for you to follow. And there's no more needing trying to figure out or overthink or worry about which directions you should be going or what actions you should be taking, because it's all right there in front of you because you wrote it down. So this is point number 2, guys. You need to write down a course of action and you need to stick to it. All right. I'm so glad you guys made it to point number 3, man. That says a lot about you as a listener. You know, you're someone that's a completer. You're someone that's actually following step number 2, which is writing down a course of action and sticking to it. And that's what you're doing through this podcast. And that is freaking amazing. So, man, I want to say thank you for that. So point number 3, the last but most important part of helping you to stop overthinking is to bring awareness to your overthinking. Now you may be asking like, man, how does that help, right? Well, I'll explain it to you. So here in South Florida, but also in any major city, and also you may have seen this on a show or a movie, there's this thing called 3-card money. And the way this game works is that you have a guy, he's known as a hustler, who has these 3 cards. And your goal is to find the queen out of these 3 cards. Now, what you're going to see is you're going to see a group of people gathered around this little table, if you will. And you're going to see a guy just simply flipping these cards over one after another after another. And you're going to see someone who's in on this hustle, right? That's in on this scam. You're going to see them play the game. You're going to see them win. And then you're going to see another person and maybe even a third person play this game and win it as well. So what does this do? This creates social proof. It creates this idea that, hey, this game can be won. So what ends up happening is the guy that's doing the hustle, he invites you over to come play, and you not knowing that it's a hustle, you engage with it. And when you play your money, you may win the first one, you may win the second one, but he's going to up the ante on you for that third one. He may say, hey, I know you've been playing for $10 hands, but you've been doing such a good job. How about we play for 100? And you thinking that it's easy money, you're going to say, great, sure. This is just $100 we're going to win. And when you flip the king, or when you flip the card over, you realize that it's a king instead of a queen. And then you end up losing your money. What does this have to do with bringing awareness to your mind? What does this have to do with overthinking? Well, if you're able to notice that your overthinking is a scam, your overthinking is a hustle, you're not going to engage with it. You're going to keep walking past it. And this is exactly what you should do if you ever see these guys playing this game. You also may see people playing this game with little bottle caps. That's another way that people play this game. But nonetheless, when you know something is a scam, you don't engage with it. You keep walking past it. When you see that your mind is doing that overthinking thing again, it's a scam as well. It's trying to fool you into all the negative things and the bad things that could happen. But that's not true. As a matter of fact, there's a study that showed that 85% of the things that you worry about never even happen. And this is the hustle that your mind is playing on you right now. So simply notice it and then ask yourself, what is the next course of action that I should be taking, and take it. This is the best way to help you to overcome your overthinking, and it's probably the fastest way that's going to get you from point A to point B. So from overthinking to overproducing, because now you're focused on the work and not all the negative things that could happen. So real quick, I'm going to summarize these 3 main points that is guaranteed to help you to stop overthinking. And the first point that I made was that you need to be where your feet are. This is a great quote by Oprah Winfrey and also Nick Saban when they were asked, what is mindfulness? Being where your feet are is a conscious action that you're making right now to be present, which helps you to stay anchored in the right here, right now, and not floating your way into some future that may never even happen. The second point that I made is that you need to write down your course of action and stick to it. Guys, whenever you put together a crib like myself or a desk, it's not going to seem possible at first. You may even look at it and say, hey, there may be some pieces missing. But if you stick to it, trust me when I say you will have that end goal, that end product that you're looking to create. But you just need to focus on step 1. That's all you need to do. And then the third and final point that I made is that you need to bring awareness to your overthinking. Your mind is trying to hustle you, and you don't have to fall for that hustle every single time. Decide to let it go. Decide to walk past it. And trust me when I say it'll give you more time and energy to focus on the real work. So this is Coach Wells. I'm a licensed therapist. Thank you for checking out this podcast, and I'll see you guys later.